Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alexandra Doviadvine, and on behalf of Vaughan Public Libraries, it is my great pleasure to welcome everybody at the Maple Library branch. The Maple Library has been at the heart of the Maple community for nearly 3 decades, and even during the current pandemic, staff at this location have continued to serve customers through our curbside pickup program and a range of innovative online programs. COVID-19 has again and again demonstrated the resilience of our staff and their commitment to inspire, enrich, and transform the communities that they serve. So while some of our doors may currently be closed, please know that our libraries will always remain open and accessible. Today we are happy to host the Honorable Stephen Lecce, Minister of Education and MPP for King Vaughan. Mr. Lecce, welcome to Vaughan Public Libraries.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Alexandra. I appreciate that. Alexandra's the Deputy CEO here at Vaughan Public Libraries. I have very fond memories right here in this library and many of the libraries right across the city where I studied as a youngster, and I'm very grateful for the work they do, especially now during the pandemic, to encourage literacy and engagement, not just with young people, but with our seniors. So thank you to the staff. You're all doing amazing work. And we look forward to one day coming back in person with many young people right here in the city of Vaughan and across our province. And thank you to everyone for joining today. Every young person in Ontario deserves to have the best, most qualified teacher at the front of their class. Now, I've not met a parent that does not believe at their core that their child deserves the best educator, no matter what. Quality, diversity, innovation, this is what matters. Now, for nearly a decade, Ontario has hired educators based on seniority. It did not serve our students well. In fact, it undermined the quality of teaching in many cases. Now, I'm fiercely, unapologetically proud of Ontario's educators. They do exceptional work, and I would argue we have the very best in this country, full stop. The issue isn't our educators. It's the system of hiring. A system that rewards union seniority over one's merit. A system that ignores the unique experiences and innovation that teachers can bring to their diverse classrooms right across this province. This is especially true for our newest teachers, who want nothing more than to be shaping the next generation of leaders. They've worked hard, and frankly, the current hiring system is not respecting them and their contributions to our students. Parents deserve a system that is built for their kids, not to advance the interests of some. Now, today we face multiple challenges with hiring. First, as noted in countless studies, our teachers do not reflect the communities in which they serve. We're not seeing the representation of qualified teachers from many backgrounds that define our province's rich diversity. Our classrooms simply do not reflect our province, and that is a problem. How is it in Peel region, just to our neighbors to the west? As noted in the recent Peel report that I had tasked, that the student population with over 50% racialized kids have less than 25% of racialized staff. Students perform better when they see themselves reflected in their class, including the educator at the front of their classroom. We know this to be true. This is about giving real hope and creating a meaningful pathway where these kids, who are often overrepresented in suspension, streamed down, and fewer graduates compared to non-Black students, for example, have every opportunity to succeed, and then some. Because clearly the status quo in this province is not working. And for those parents of Black, of South Asian, and other communities, they demand better, and we agree. Needless to say, we're also in the midst of a global pandemic. Schools need teachers and teachers need schools, and we have committed truly extraordinary and unprecedented resources for schools to hire all available teachers. The problem is not funding or resources. It's a challenge where principals cannot hire quickly. They cannot hire these teachers quickly enough due to the very restrictive elements imposed by Regulation 274, meaning that when our principals need to hire an educator, they are constrained by an outdated process when they need to get qualified teachers into the class right now. So we have to move at a rapid speed to serve our kids. Finally, new teachers have been held back by this regulation, and I just think that's not fair. They are bright, they are motivated, they're often tech savvy, and yet they wait 5, 6, 7, 8 years just to be hired. This is counter to our vision, and they have not had a partner in their corner for quite some time in this respect. So to you, the next generation, our new educators, I hear you, and we see you, and we are acting today by announcing help that will help you fulfill your career to graduate and to earn a positive role within our schools. And I'm proud of you, and I'm proud to be in your corner in this respect. I am motivated by the next generation of modern and innovative educators who are rising within our ranks and becoming leaders within our school boards and beyond. 2 million students depend on our ability to break down barriers to their success, to break down the barriers that impede their upward mobility, and to tear down these biases that exist within our system. Because as noted, the status quo is indefensible. This transformational change that we're driving will embolden a generation of students and educators to unleash their potential and tear down the systemic barriers that hold them back. It is for that reason that I am proud to announce that Regulation 274 is being revoked in this province. Moving forward, merit will lead hiring within our schools. Teacher hiring in Ontario will now be dictated by merit, diversity, and the unique needs of schools and communities within our province over seniority. This is about giving school principals more flexibility to hire the very best teaching staff to serve their students day in and day out. It's crucial now more than ever as thousands of educators continue to be hired, and to keep our schools safe, we need to give our principals the latitude to get it done. It's also about ensuring that students see themselves reflected within their schools. And I will never forget the conversation I had with a young black student in Mississauga who said to me, and I quote, "In my entire career from K to 12, from kindergarten to grade 12, I had one black teacher, one. And now my sister's going in these schools and nothing has changed," end quote. We also know that when schools reflect communities around them, there are immediate and long-term positive impacts on those students. Better achievement, more consistent attendance, higher graduation, and post-secondary education as well. Nous nous engageons à embaucher les meilleurs enseignants pour vos enfants. Our commitment is to hire the best educator for your child. And it's why the government will move forward with ensuring qualified and diverse candidates are given opportunities to work and to get promoted. The revocation of this regressive regulation will allow students, parents, and innovative educators to usher in a new wave of opportunity that restores a meritocracy when it comes to promoting and hiring the very best educators for your child. Thank you.
We'll go to the phone lines for questions. Just a reminder, it's one question and one follow-up. First question.
Will be from Chris Rushery at the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I was just wondering, this is going to be quite a controversial change, I think, for the teacher unions who have supported Reg 274. I'm just wondering why you are bringing it in now. Boards have already done the bulk of their hiring for the school year.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We right now have undertaken a pretty significant commitments to hiring new educators. And one of the consistent refrains I hear from principals and school boards over the past weeks is that this regulation, more than it ever did, is impeding the ability to swiftly hire, period. And it continues to really undermine the principle and spirit of quality and merit at the heart of the hiring of our educators. When we're undertaking hiring of hundreds of more staff now, more funding to flow in the context of the federal funds for next semester, we have an obligation, I think, to ensure that we just revert the system where the best teacher leads the way. The other issue, why this is timely and why we're acting today in part, is because we have, in good faith, asked the Ontario Teachers Federation to rescind the 50-day rule, which would enable school boards to hire the next generation of teachers quickly. There's an issue dealing with 50 days and their pension. And we've asked them to waive that in this one-off extraordinary circumstance. It has no meaningful impact on anyone. It just allows school boards to hire from a larger pool of talent. And we are working with them. We have made our case. I have urged them through consecutive letters. The Deputy Minister has made interventions. We are doing everything we can to make the case, but they have rejected our call. We sent them a letter on October 5th, and we said in the letter, 76% of boards in the September survey reported they are experiencing shortages of vocational teachers on their supply list, end quote. That is a letter sent October 5th. It's worse today. And without the support of the Ontario Teachers Federation to allow for expanded access of educators, we believe revoking 274 can at least in part help these principals hire now and get on with it. It is not right for a parent in this province to have to experience not having a teacher, not because of a lack of funds, Chris, not because of a lack of access to talent, but because the systems slow them down or ultimately undermine the ability to hire. So I think we got to move forward with this. I think quality in this year, after the months of this pandemic, after the difficulties of the last year, and the context of quality of our learning, I would argue that quality perhaps matters now more than ever, where we see learning gaps, where we see young people struggling in the context of last year's learning to this year. So there are a variety of reasons why we need to get on with this. We need to drive this change on behalf of parents who've been calling for it, many young teachers and principals, and today we're proceeding on that basis.
Follow-up?
Yes, I also wanted to ask with regards to class sizes. We've had some reports from boards who are doing the reorganization now with students moving between virtual and in person. And we've heard from parents who are saying that the kids' classes are growing. And I'm just wondering, the in-person classes are growing. So I'm just wondering if the government's going to do anything new for boards to help them keep class sizes or help them get class sizes down.
Yeah, we have seen class sizes province-wide with in-class, province-wide averages are down in every school board in York and Toronto and Peel. Literally in every school board action is being taken to reduce them. We are providing and we will continue to provide school boards more funding in this respect to enable them to do more hiring. But going back to today's announcement, they're very much interconnected. If we provide the funding, which we have, and we will continue to your question, yes, there's an additional $380 million we're allocating for school boards, in part to support additional hiring, to allow them to keep those classroom sizes down and to really maximize distancing, which is something we believe is important in conjunction with all the other layers of prevention put in place. But with access to the funding and with access to the teacher, the system is slowing these principals down. And so, yes, we're providing more resources. We will continue to do so, including the additional $380 million. We just announced $35 million specifically targeting York, Peel, Ottawa, and Toronto, which are communities we've seen higher rates of growth. We have funding set aside to expand that to other boards that may need it based on the data and based on the transmission community transmission risk within those respective regions. So we'll continue to step up and be there. This province is uniquely positioned. We have spent more than any province. That in itself is not a virtue. It's what we're getting for you, the investment of the taxpayer, that we've more than doubled public health nurses within our schools. The fact that we have significant investments in cleaning of our schools, over 1,000 new custodians, over 2,000 more teachers have been hired because of government funding as well as reserve funding. And together, that's making a meaningful difference where provinces around the country are looking to Ontario as a standard, recognizing, Chris, as imperfect as COVID is in every realm, in every ministry, in every facet of life. But I really think we have something to be proud of in this province where 2 million kids are learning, where we stood up an online system that never existed. And we dramatically improved the standards of online learning from the spring, which were not acceptable, to a standard that I think is that I know is leading this country. As I think a benchmark, a high standard that I think other provinces are trying to emulate or trying their very best to catch up to. So we're going to continue to build on our strengths, recognizing we have a lot to do.
Next question.
A reminder to press *1 should you have a question. Next, we will hear from Mike Crawley at CBC News.
Hi, Minister Lecce. Just wondered if you could also just clarify if this is a temporary revoking of the regulation during the course of the pandemic, or if this is a permanent thing. But just to ask you something a little more meaty. Why only doing it now? Why weren't you able to make this happen at the bargaining table? Isn't it something that it's in place in all of the contracts? So are you not basically tearing up the agreements, the collective agreements that were reached with the teachers' unions in the past year?
Well, with respect to the collective agreements, in the context of OECTA, as you know, in the collective agreement, we have 35% committed to moving to a merit-based system. So incrementally watering down that regulation by at least 35%, which I believe is an incremental victory for students. Obviously, in the next negotiation in 2 years, we'll continue to make the case to get to 100%. In the public school boards, in the negotiations, what was agreed upon, what is written in the collective agreement, is we retain the right as the government, the context of regulation, to rescind or abolish or amend a regulation. We are exercising that right based on the overwhelming evidence and perspective from families, from racialized families who want to see more diversity hiring, qualified diversity hiring. We've heard it from principals in the last month and a half who've said we have an issue with supply, we cannot find teachers. Some schools have had to send in not qualified educators to essentially watch the class. We cannot allow that to happen. Now, part of it is fast tracking the next generation of teachers into our systems, rescinding the 50-day rule, as was noted, and we are calling on and urging the Ontario Teachers Federation to review this again and work with us, because at the end of the day, it's a temporary measure. We're not looking for this to be a long-term exercise. Just help us now deal with this unprecedented difficulty where we have a higher level of absenteeism, obviously due to COVID. And in the context of our broader actions, I mean, I think this is a well-known position by the government. And given that we've done the critical mass of hiring, we've heard from principals, we've heard from frontline young educators, we've heard from racialized families, and given the lack of movement in another area, in the 50-day rule, which we think could really help fill these gaps, these staffing gaps, we're moving forward today to help our principals, even incrementally, have the latitude and the speed, I think, that is required during COVID. The Premier often says we have to move at COVID speed, and I think we really have to do, in this respect, better. With respect to, so that provides a bit of context as to where we're at, what was negotiated, and how this is sort of aligned with that reality. And I think it's going to help move forward with hiring.
Follow up?
Sorry, Mike, remind me the first part of the question.
Well, it was about whether this is temporary or permanent.
Thank you. We're providing school boards with time for the end of the year to come up with an interim policy, sort of the end of October to Christmas. That gives them time to develop an interim policy with the framework we're setting out. In that framework includes a variety of prerequisites or universal elements that I think are going to help in the context of rooting out nepotism and dealing with the very legitimate issues that may have existed in the past. So we've taken a very proactive approach to mitigate any problems and ultimately just revert the system from a seniority-based system that really incentivizes union-based seniority to a merit-based, qualification-based, mobility-based, and diversity-based system that is fundamentally going to help improve the quality of learning in every classroom. So temporary for the year, it'll be a permanent revocation once the boards come up with their own guidelines for 2021 and beyond.
Follow up?
So, my follow-up would be, how do you respond to the criticism that I'm already seeing that you're basically using the cover of COVID, of the pandemic, to push through a policy that you guys have long said you wanted to get rid of this regulation, and so you're just using the pandemic as an excuse to ram this through?
Well, I think what is clear for parents is three things. One is now more than ever, they appreciate that a qualified educator is so necessary to unleash the potential of a child. When you have had some learning gaps, we've had an inconsistent last year, a challenging last year. We had a difficult period in the spring where kids were sent home. And that experience, I think, was not at a standard that I think really met the spirit of what we want for this province. I think it becomes quite obvious to people that we have to improve the qualification of those we hire and of those we promote. And that is a system that I don't believe, respectfully, Mike, should be controversial in this province, that a meritocracy at the very heart of teaching children. I mean, at the end of the day, who does this system serve? Who does the education system serve? It serves 2 million children, full stop, and their parents, with a mandate to universalize quality learning. and I'm fully committed to that. So I think this is really as soon as possible to move forward with a change that will really improve qualification is going to make a difference. So yes, we should proceed. In the context of a lack of access to teachers and the time it takes in the context of the regulation right now, interviewing 5 candidates, it's slowing the process down. And don't take it from me. Speak to principals who will say the regulation was always regressive and always not particularly helpful to students. But this year, most especially, it is acutely impacting the ability of educators principals to hire educators. And finally, I think this is a well-telegraphed position we've taken. And if we can help our school boards, our principals and administrators right now hire more young teachers and get them into classrooms to enhance distancing, I would argue this also has a connection to the safety of our kids. If we can facilitate faster hiring, I think it'll make a big difference.
Last question.
From Denise Pagliawan at Canadian Press. Please go ahead, Denise.
Hi, Minister Lecce. This is a bit off topic, but you've given school boards the option to not hold exams because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if this can have potential impacts on students' education, especially for their university or college plans.
It will not. Last year I had to make a decision in the context of EKO exams, for example, and the same principle applied then as it is applying to final examinations this year. Our kids, students in this province, they can feel overwhelmed. There's a high level of anxiety and stress. My aim, listening to educators and principals and parents who've shared that, and many young people who've privately and in a variety of forms communicated the angst that's particularly high this year. If I can do something that can allow them to achieve a high standard of learning, still fulfill 100% of the instructional day, and be assessed in a manner that does not, like for example, in an examination that may increase that stress. I think if I can come up with an alternative, which we have in the ministry, allowing educators to have more discretion, utilizing their professional judgment to look for essays or report-based assessment, I think that's a positive thing. And I just think it should be allowed given the circumstance. I just don't want to increase the anxiety of our students. And I think it's been a message that's been broadly well received by frontline educators that are going to retain that right, that flexibility, and apply it where they see fit, because an essay, an extended report, these are all ways in which an educator can, I think, very credibly assess the performance of a student.
Follow up, this will be the last question.
Yes, and I'm wondering why you decided to make that an option instead of having just one rule for all boards to make it like a fair playing field.
Well, we've always, in the ministry and in this province, we always rely on professional judgment of our educators. Generally speaking, that is something we do. In this context, we made a decision province-wide to not mandate it. And what we're hearing is overwhelmingly educators will not. It's a discussion they're going to have with their students, with their school leads, with their principals, recognizing that their objective, I think, is a shared one with me, which is just ultimately to reduce the stress, but still ensure the quality of learning. And I really trust them to make the best decision for their students. Okay, thank you.